Hey guys, tonight we wander into a world where tree bark isn't just rough brown stuff you avoid leaning on, but the key to creating some of the most enchanting perfumes you've never heard of. Imagine drifting through a twilight market in ancient Malaysia, where the air is so thick with spice and sweet floral notes that you practically have to swim through it. Incense curls around wooden stalls, and the glow from oil lamps makes the entire scene shimmer like a half-remembered dream. A hawker with a basket of mysterious bottles beckons you closer. He's got bark oils, sticky resins, and flower pastes so aromatic they could probably wake the dead, or at least keep you from falling asleep for a few more minutes. You might think, there's no way this was safe or pleasant, and honestly, you probably wouldn't survive this market without sneezing yourself into another dimension. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is, just so we can imagine each other under the same sleepy stars. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge deeper into the market, weaving past baskets of turmeric, piles of cinnamon, and bright woven mats that smell like fresh river reeds. Every few steps, someone splashes a handful of water on the dusty paths to keep the smells from swirling too wildly. Historians still argue whether these splashy little traditions were purely practical or part of a subtle scent ritual to guide the nose toward the good stuff. A woman in a bright sarong waves you over to a low table covered in small clay jars. She uncorks one, and instantly a wave of sweet, almost creamy warmth drifts up. You lean in too far and nearly sneeze yourself backward. She laughs, apparently that's a good sign here. She explains that this particular perfume was made from gaharu bark, sometimes called eaglewood, prized for its deep, resinous fragrance. In ancient Malaysia, gaharu wasn't just perfume, it was currency, status symbol, and spiritual armor all at once. It's said that merchants traveling to China or the Middle East often carried more bark resin than gold. Meanwhile, a man behind her hawks another perfume that smells like roasted honey and salted mango. He claims it comes from a special tree that only grows on misty hilltops where hornbills nest. Historians still argue whether that tree really existed or whether it was simply the ancient version of limited edition marketing. Children run by carrying bundles of fresh pandan leaves, giggling and teasing each other about who has the strongest smelling hands. An older woman splashes a few drops of bark extract behind her ears, giving you a wink that suggests she knows at least 3 scandalous stories about it. Under the flickering oil lamps, your eyes catch a small shrine tucked between stalls. A clay figurine, half melted from age and heat, holds a tiny wooden bowl of bark shavings. Local rumor says traders would leave offerings here, hoping for a successful voyage, or maybe just a particularly fragrant batch that didn't end up smelling like swamp water. A young girl offers you a thin strip of bark to chew on, for courage. You politely decline, mostly because you've already heard rumors of someone turning bright purple after an overzealous bark snack. The air is dense but gentle, heavy with flower and bark in equal measure. You feel like you're walking through someone's dream of a tropical forest, a dream that doesn't end with mosquitoes or surprise mud puddles. You pause, feeling the warmth of an oil lamp on your cheek, and think about how much care went into each jar on these tables. Bark that was stripped by moonlight, sap stirred with wooden sticks carved by ancestors, oil stored in coconut shells for entire seasons. And somewhere in all this scent-laden haze, you get a glimpse of ancient Malaysian life, practical, playful, deeply spiritual, and definitely much smellier than most modern guidebooks would dare mention. As the market scents slowly fade behind you, you slip into a rainforest path just as dawn begins to stretch its pink and gold fingers across the sky. The morning mist clings to your shoulders like a sleepy cat, and each breath feels like inhaling green velvet. You can almost taste the dew settling on the massive leaves overhead. A small group of villagers waves you forward, baskets balanced on their backs, ready to guide you deeper into the forest. You trudge along in bare feet, your modern sandals would have betrayed you with every squeak and slip. Historians still argue whether ancient Malaysian gatherers truly preferred to go barefoot for spiritual reasons or simply because shoes got hilariously stuck in the muddy undergrowth. Suddenly, you hear the rhythmic thwack-thwack of someone slicing a vine nearby. You turn your head just in time to see an elder carefully extracting a thin, aromatic strip of bark from a towering tree. He moves as if he's performing a dance choreographed by centuries of whispered instructions. The villagers believe that if you approach the tree too aggressively, it might lock its scent and never release its precious oils again, and they aren't taking chances. You follow along, brushing past low-hanging orchids and drifting sprays of fern spores. The air shifts from sweet to earthy, from floral to almost spicy. You're beginning to think this walk might just be nature's version of a perfume shop, each corner offering a new note, a new surprise for your nose. Your guide stops suddenly beside a tree so wide you could host a family dinner party on its trunk. He presses his forehead gently to the bark in greeting before making the first gentle cut. A milky sap begins to bead out, shimmering like pearls in the dawn light. The aroma that emerges is both sharp and calming, a fragrance that feels like it could both wake you up and lull you back to sleep. Nearby, two young boys crouch and gather fallen twigs that smell like gingerbread when snapped. One boy holds up a piece and proudly declares it's tiger bark, though no tigers have actually been spotted using it as aftershave. You raise an eyebrow, and he just giggles before scampering off to show his find to a friend. A grandmother figure follows closely behind, humming a tune that sounds like water flowing over stones. She wears a necklace of woven rattan and carries a pouch of betel nut, which she occasionally chews with a conspiratorial wink at you. She explains that chewing betel nut was believed to sharpen the nose, though historians still argue whether it genuinely enhanced scent or just gave everyone something to do while waiting for sap to drip. You pause to admire a giant pitcher plant, its mouth gaping as though it's about to tell you an old forest secret. The villagers insist that even these insect-trapping plants have their own scent signatures that influence the bark's eventual perfume profile, nature's way of collaborating on a final masterpiece. As the group moves from tree to tree, they hum and chatter, sometimes singing gently to the forest as they work. They believe these songs help keep spirits at ease, a sort of auditory handshake with unseen guardians. You join in, your voice awkward at first, but eventually it blends with the canopy chorus. By mid-morning, your arms and nose are dizzy from the sheer barrage of smells. You start to understand why these people treasured bark so deeply. It wasn't just about fragrance, but a living memory of each sunrise, each season, and each whispered song echoing among the vines. Before you leave this clearing, you sit on a mossy rock, wiping sweat from your brow. You glance back at the majestic trees, standing proud like wise old guardians of 1,000 secrets. You imagine them recording your visit in the forest's own silent census. Another curious wanderer, sniffing and singing, went home with a story today. And as the sunlight pushes deeper into the forest floor, you rise, following your guides toward the next fragrant adventure, grateful for every earthy note and every gentle laugh echoing through the leaves. After that refreshing forest concert, you're led to an area where the trees grow even taller, casting shadows so cool and dense they feel like a private, perfumed cave. The ground here is littered with fallen petals and strange twisted roots that resemble giant knotted noodles. You have to watch your step unless you want to perform an unplanned interpretive dance for the squirrels. Your guide stops beside a massive tree, tapping its trunk lightly with a carved stick. This is the moment you learn about the fine art of choosing the perfect bark, and it's no walk in the flower-scented park. Picking bark isn't just about grabbing the nearest piece, it's a delicate decision akin to selecting a ripe avocado at the grocery store but with even more judgment from the aunties. They search for trees that have lived through several monsoon cycles, believing those storms imbue the bark with a stronger, more mysterious fragrance. Historians still argue whether the age of the tree truly affects the final scent or if it's more of a poetic flourish passed down through village gossip. A young boy points out scars on one tree, marks left from past bark harvests. They're surprisingly beautiful, like nature's tattoos. The locals say these trees remember every visitor and every song sung beneath them, a living diary that holds your secrets in silence. You rest your palm on the rough surface and almost expect it to pulse back a reply. Nearby, a woman balances a basket on her head filled with different bark strips. She explains each type. One is dark and spicy, another sweet and creamy, another sharp enough to make your eyes water if you sniff too hard. You wonder if ancient Malaysians ever played bark roulette at festivals, a cheeky challenge to see who would sneeze first. She offers you a tiny strip to try sniffing. You cautiously lean forward and are instantly met with a complex swirl of smoky, caramel, and forest rain scents all at once. Your eyes water, but you politely nod as though you've just inhaled the universe's best latte. She claps in delight. The elders gather around a large fallen log to discuss which barks will be used for upcoming ceremonies and which will go into the marriage perfumes, special blends created to ensure couples begin their union smelling like enchanted forest creatures rather than nervous humans. Historians still argue whether these perfumes were truly designed for love magic or simply to cover up the general human funk that results from tropical life. Either way, they seem to work, or at least led to some entertaining stories at family gatherings. An elderly man sits cross-legged, slowly sharpening a curved knife. The blade looks ancient, passed through generations like a family secret. He demonstrates the first gentle peel of bark, moving so carefully you could swear he was slicing moonlight itself. Every curl that falls into his basket feels like a gift from the tree, an offering for all the songs and dances shared beneath its branches. The ground is scattered with bright green moss and pale, papery bark shavings, creating a carpet that smells better than most high-end spas. You shift your weight from foot to foot, inhaling deeply despite the occasional stray gnat that wants to explore your nose. As you look around, you notice a small altar made from stones, decorated with strings of fragrant flowers and a few coins left by passing travelers. People whisper short prayers here, hoping for good bark and gentle weather. You wonder what would happen if you left behind a modern object, a phone charger, perhaps, as an offering. But then you imagine the spirits scratching their ethereal heads, so you keep your pockets zipped. Eventually, as the sun climbs higher, the chosen bark is gathered into woven baskets, each piece humming its own quiet song. You can almost hear the promise of future perfumes, drifting in and out like a half-remembered dream. And with baskets on backs and blades tucked away, you and the villagers begin to move toward the next step in this fragrant adventure, already plotting which barks will mix best with distant blossoms and ocean breezes. Your feet ache slightly as you shuffle along a narrow forest path, weaving around twisting tree roots and moss-covered rocks. The air has grown warmer, and sunlight filters through the canopy in shimmering golden beams that dance on your skin like gentle hands at a spa. Ahead, you hear a distant splashing, as though someone's running a rustic outdoor bubble bath. You follow the sound until it opens up to a small, hidden spring-fed pool, a place where the villagers cleanse the bark before transforming it into perfume. A woman with a wide straw hat stands waist-deep in the water, rhythmically dipping long strips of bark into the pool. Each movement seems more like a ritual than a chore. She explains that the water here is considered sacred, believed to carry the spirit of the mountain and infuse the bark with its refreshing soul. Historians still argue whether this was just a poetic marketing line or genuinely made a difference in fragrance quality. You roll up your sleeves and tentatively reach in, only to pull back when a tiny fish nibbles at your finger. The woman laughs, telling you the fish help taste the bark, ensuring no bitterness remains. You can't help but imagine them as tiny, aquatic food critics. On the banks, young children play tag, occasionally pausing to toss pebbles into the pool. One mischievous boy splashes you on purpose, and you find yourself giggling despite your best efforts to look dignified. Nearby, older villagers sort bark by scent intensity, laying each piece on large palm leaves to dry under the sun. The heat draws out subtler aromas, transforming the bark into something almost magical. You catch hints of vanilla, wet earth, and a faint echo of the rainforest's midnight breeze. A grandmother places a small bowl of ground turmeric near the drying bark, explaining that it helps ward off unwanted insects and mischievous forest spirits. She pats your arm and winks, hinting that a bit of turmeric might help ward off the odd dinner guest or nosy neighbor, too. Further along, two men sit cross-legged with small wooden mallets, pounding bits of bark into thin fibers. The rhythmic tap-tap-tap creates a hypnotic soundscape, blending perfectly with the rustling leaves above and the gurgle of the spring. You find yourself lulled into a trance, nearly forgetting that you're standing in a forest workshop rather than a fancy spa. At one point, a young woman offers you a small clay cup filled with a milky white liquid. She explains that it's a fermented rice drink meant to balance the senses after a morning of strong smells. You sip carefully, surprised at its soft sweetness, and instantly feel a warm, slow wave of calm rolling through your body. As you sip, she describes how some bark-based perfumes were reserved only for the highest-ranking chieftains or visiting dignitaries. Some even claim they had formulas so secret that only one elder in each generation knew them. Historians still argue whether these so-called secret formulas were true or just a clever way to keep nosy rivals at bay. Next to the pounding station, a teenager carefully folds bark fibers into small packets bound with twine. These little packages were often given as love tokens or protective charms, a delicate gesture that said, "I like you enough to risk smelling like a tree for you." You take a deep breath and glance around, children squealing, elders humming, bark drying under the sun like golden ribbons. It feels timeless, as if you've stepped into an ancient lullaby, with each note carrying stories from 1,000 rainy seasons and moonlit harvests. Your guide motions for you to follow along a narrow path once again. You tuck a stray strand of bark behind your ear, mostly for comedic effect. You suspect you look like an overly enthusiastic salad. You step lightly, already imagining the next fragrant adventure waiting ahead, humming along with the village songs as you go. As you leave the spring behind, you notice the air shift from misty and cool to warm and sticky, as though the forest has decided to turn up the humidity just to keep you humble. The ground is scattered with fallen blossoms, each step releasing faint puffs of scent like a gentle exhale from the earth itself. Your guide leads you toward a clearing where an open-air kitchen hums with quiet activity. Here, the villagers boil bark extracts into thick, syrupy resin, the sticky soul of future perfumes. Smoke curls lazily into the sky, carrying hints of caramel and moss so sweet you're tempted to taste it. But remember, licking the bark syrup is strictly for comedic daydreams, not actual practice. A woman stirs a giant clay pot with a wooden paddle nearly as tall as she is. Every swirl seems to unlock another layer of scent, like unwrapping endless birthday gifts. She leans over and explains that different woods are combined in exact proportions, not too spicy, not too sweet, and certainly not too much swamp vibe, as she calls it with a mischievous grin. Historians still argue whether these precise blending rituals were scientific experiments or simply guided by intuition passed down over countless moonlit storytelling sessions. Either way, the results are mesmerizing. On one side, a young boy carefully schemes the foam off the bubbling mixture and collects it into a gourd bowl. This foam is said to be spirit breath, believed to hold the forest's blessing. The boy flicks some at you playfully, and you can't help but laugh as droplets land on your forehead like a mischievous forest baptism. Around the edges of the clearing, women kneel beside shallow clay trays lined with palm leaves, pouring in the reduced bark syrup to cool and harden. Once solidified, these blocks will be shaved down, melted, or even chewed in small ceremonial doses, though chewing is generally reserved for daredevil romantics who want to prove their love by tasting pure forest essence. Nearby, an elder sits cross-legged with a set of small glass vials, dipping a feather into each one and wafting them gently under his nose. He explains that some perfumes were blended for spiritual protection, others to attract wealth, and a few to ensure good dreams, or at least to keep the mosquitoes guessing. A cluster of teenagers sits by a low table, debating which bark combinations best represent different emotions. One suggests a blend for secret crush, another insists on a recipe for wishing you didn't eat that third plate of rice. You join the laughter, realizing these young perfumers might be the ancient equivalent of modern meme makers, except their memes last in scent rather than pixels. Further back, a woman is grinding dried blossoms into fine powder to be mixed into the bark resin later. She sprinkles some on her arm, sniffs, and smiles knowingly. You ask her what she smells, and she replies, "Midnight rain on banana leaves, with a hint of shy moonlight." You pretend to nod wisely, though internally you're thinking it smells like fancy oatmeal. As the sun begins to dip toward the canopy, a hush falls over the clearing. Everyone turns toward a large woven basket, from which an elder woman lifts a small clay jar. She ceremoniously opens it, releasing a perfume so rich and complex that it feels like being embraced by an old forest friend. Historians still argue whether this final blend was always kept hidden for religious use or occasionally shared during village-wide celebrations. Tonight, however, the villagers are generous and invite you to sniff. You lean in and catch whiffs of moss, citrus peel, and smoky bamboo. You nearly swoon, steadying yourself on a nearby tree as though the scent has literally knocked you off balance. With a chorus of soft laughter, the villagers begin to pack up for the evening, leaving behind trails of fragrance that cling to your skin and memory alike. You watch the last wisps of smoke fade into the twilight sky, your mind floating on a fragrant cloud as you prepare to follow them to the next magical stop. As you drift out of the forest kitchen, the sunset filters through the trees in warm ribbons, painting your path in molten orange. You feel a bit like you've stumbled into a living painting, one that smells 10 times better than any museum could hope to offer. Ahead, you spot a circle of villagers seated around a fire pit, where small pots bubble over gentle flames. The aroma is almost impossibly layered: smoky bark resin, sweet blossoms, and a sharp undertone of something reminiscent of green mango peel. You hesitate for a moment, half expecting Gordon Ramsay to appear and start yelling about underseasoned broth. A young girl waves you over, offering a low wooden stool. You sit cautiously, only to realize it's surprisingly comfortable, perhaps because it's woven from palm leaves that flex like a hammock. A grandmother begins to chant softly while stirring her pot, her voice low and rhythmic, hypnotic as a lullaby carried on a jungle breeze. Tonight is the sacred blending ceremony, a final step where chosen bark extracts meet dried flowers, ground seeds, and rare forest oils. Each ingredient is believed to carry not just scent, but memory, like locking away an entire season in a single drop. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies were originally spiritual acts or more of a community bonding excuse to sniff weird things together by firelight. Beside you, a man delicately pinches powdered turmeric into his pot. When you ask why, he says it warms the perfume's soul and helps bind the other ingredients. You try not to imagine the perfume coming to life with arms and legs, but your brain helpfully sketches a spicy little figure dancing in the pot anyway. A young woman holds up a fragrant blossom and explains it symbolizes renewal and hidden love, an ingredient perfect for wedding perfumes or those seeking a fresh start. Another villager tosses in a handful of crushed star anise, claiming it can bring clarity of mind. You quietly wonder if a whole pocketful could help you remember where you last left your keys. The communal pot bubbles happily, as if sharing in the jokes and soft gossip swirling around the circle. You hear whispers of who is secretly seeing whom, who sang off-key at last season's moon festival, and which dog in the village is a reincarnated ancestor, possibly explaining his judgmental stares during dinner. Once the final ingredients are added, the villagers lift the pots and swirl them gently, letting the scents mingle under the moonlight. The fragrance dances upward in delicate, transparent threads that shimmer as they catch the fire's glow. You lean forward, mesmerized, almost forgetting to breathe as you watch the steam weave invisible stories into the night sky. A woman passes you a thin bamboo stick dipped in the warm blend. You wave it slowly under your nose, nearly tipping over from the intensity of the aroma: citrusy forest rain, warm nutmeg, and a whisper of ocean breeze, as if the perfume had taken a vacation across 3 continents. Historians still argue whether these communal blends were intended solely for spiritual use or if they occasionally doubled as surprise gifts during festivals. Either way, tonight's batch feels precious and impossibly intimate, like a handwritten love letter sealed in dew. Eventually, the elders pour the perfume into small clay pots and cover them with banana leaves. You notice one villager carefully painting symbols on each pot, representing the ingredients and the phase of the moon under which it was made. You can't help but imagine modern perfume bottles with cute moon emojis on their labels, a missed marketing opportunity for sure. As the ceremony winds down, the villagers hum in unison, an echo that seems to rise from the forest floor and swirl around your ankles like a protective fog. You feel almost weightless, as if the perfume spirit has tugged you a little closer to the canopy stars. When it's finally time to move on, you stand slowly, taking one last look at the glowing fire pit and your new circle of fragrance-loving friends. With a light step and the scent of 100 forest secrets trailing behind you, you set off down the moonlit path toward the next chapter of your scented journey. Your feet crunch softly along the moonlit forest path, each step echoing a distant drumbeat you can almost hear under your skin. You're no longer surprised when the air changes. It now feels thicker, richer, as if you're walking into the belly of some enormous, fragrant beast. Ahead, small oil lamps flicker on the edges of a wide clearing. Their glow reveals woven baskets overflowing with dried flowers, aromatic seeds, and, most intriguing of all, stacks of folded bark scrolls. A young man beckons you closer, waving a scroll dramatically like he's about to announce a wrestling match. The scrolls, he explains, are perfumers' diaries. Each one chronicles experimental blends, secret ingredient ratios, and poetic notes on how to capture a sunrise in a bottle. Historians still argue whether these scrolls were accurate recipes or simply creative expressions to keep rivals guessing. You unroll one carefully. It's covered in delicate drawings of leaves, swirls, and tiny stick figures holding their noses or dancing wildly. You suspect these doodles were the ancient equivalent of TikTok reaction videos. Beside you, a woman demonstrates how to read the scent phrases. She holds a piece of bark close to her nose, inhales deeply, then waves it around as if casting a spell. You copy her, but accidentally sneeze so hard that a nearby dog lets out a judgmental bark. The villagers laugh, and you feel oddly proud to be the evening's entertainment. Nearby, two older men argue about the correct sequence of layering the fragrances. One insists that floral notes must always go first, while the other insists on earth tones to ground the spirit. You nod sagely, pretending you're deeply invested, though really you're just enjoying the performance. Historians still argue whether there was truly a universal layering rule or if each village improvised to match their personality, and, let's be honest, who had the best-smelling dog. At the edge of the clearing, a young girl presents a basket of finished perfume sachets, small pouches woven from palm leaves, each filled with scented powder. She encourages you to choose one that matches your soul tonight. You reach for one labeled with a simple moon symbol. When you press it to your nose, you're hit with a dreamy mix of fresh rain, charred wood, and a sweet edge that makes you think of mango at midnight. A group of teenagers giggles as they trade sachets and predict each other's fortunes. One girl says that a particular spicy scent means someone will fall in love with you at the next rice festival, or at least offer you their best fish stew. You pocket your moon sachet, deciding it's the kind of protective charm that doubles as a conversation starter. Further on, you discover a shallow pool surrounded by lit candles. Here, villagers cleanse their hands and faces before crafting new blends. You dip your fingers in and feel the cool water rush across your skin like a gentle whisper. The subtle fragrance of flower petals floats on the surface, adding a touch of luxury spa vibe that would make any influencer swoon. Beside the pool, an elder sits cross-legged, weaving palm leaf covers for perfume jars. She hums a tune so softly you have to lean in to hear. You realize it's the same melody that echoes during the moon festivals, a song about longing, rain, and that neighbor who always borrowed too much lemongrass. When you stand up to leave, the young man with the scroll hands you a folded piece of bark, saying it's a personal scent journey starter pack. You tuck it safely into your bag, already imagining the mysterious fragrances it might lead you to next. As you step out of the clearing, the forest feels even more alive, shimmering with invisible trails of perfume, whispered secrets, and echoes of laughter that dance between the trees. Your nose tingles, your heart feels light, and your mind drifts toward whatever aromatic adventure waits around the next bend. You wander deeper into the forest, the night now thick with stars scattered like spilled salt across the black sky. The scent trails from your moon sachet waft upward, weaving around your head like a gentle halo. Your feet guide you toward a soft, glowing light ahead. It pulses and flickers as though the moon itself decided to host a disco just for you. Stepping into the next clearing, you're greeted by rows of woven mats covered with bottles, gourds, and bowls of shimmering powders. At the center sits a wide, flat stone slab polished to a moon-like sheen. This is the mixing altar, where master perfumers blend small-batch, dream potions, perfumes so potent they're believed to shape your dreams while you sleep. A thin woman with bright eyes motions for you to sit. She offers you a shallow wooden bowl filled with tiny seeds that smell like honey and sharp citrus. You chew a few experimentally and nearly cough yourself sideways. Apparently, you're not quite ready for the advanced dreamer's diet. She chuckles softly and pats your back, her laughter as warm as a freshly steamed rice bun. Historians still argue whether these edible seeds actually induced vivid dreams or merely provided excellent dinner table stories the next morning. Either way, the villagers claim they're essential for aligning your inner garden, which sounds mysterious and, honestly, kind of like a luxury spa marketing line. On the altar, a young man grinds dried bark and petals into a fine powder using a stone pestle. His arms ripple with the effort, each press releasing bursts of forest-fresh aroma that make your eyelids flutter. Nearby, a woman drips resin into a miniature cauldron set over a low flame, stirring so carefully you'd think she was making a love potion for the moon goddess herself. You watch as she adds a single blue flower petal, which she claims channels celestial clarity into the perfume. You nod solemnly, resisting the urge to ask whether adding a red petal would channel a pizza delivery instead. A pair of older men debate whether the dream potions should include a dash of burnt coconut husk. One insists it adds an earthy foundation, while the other grumbles that it smells like last week's festival cleanup. You try to lean closer but end up bumping a gourd, causing a soft rattle that startles a small lizard into sprinting away. You apologize profusely, as though you've just offended the emperor of lizards. The woman finally pours the completed perfume into a bamboo vial and gently seals it with beeswax. She waves it under your nose. You inhale, and suddenly your mind lights up with images: moonlit river bends, swaying mangrove roots, children laughing at midnight. Your head feels floaty, as though you might drift upward and perch on a tree branch to watch the whole scene from above. Historians still argue whether these strong blends were purely personal dream tools or if they were also used to influence negotiations and alliances between neighboring villages. After all, nothing softens a business talk like both parties drifting off to the same sweet forest fantasy. Another woman hands you a thin reed pen dipped in fragrant oil and asks you to draw your dream map on a piece of bark. Your shaky lines end up looking more like a suspicious worm than a cosmic journey, but she claps her hands delightedly and claims it's very interpretive. You beam, feeling like the Picasso of the perfume forest. As you stand to leave, you realize your mind is already tingling with surreal landscapes and gentle whispers, as if the perfume's power is already reshaping your thoughts. You clutch the bamboo vial tightly, half expecting it to start humming or glowing in your palm. Turning away from the clearing, you step back into the moon-sprinkled forest, your breath slow and heavy with layered scents. You can almost hear the dreams rustling in the leaves, waiting to slip into your mind the moment your eyes finally close. You shuffle onward, your steps now a lazy sway as the dream potion's gentle suggestions echo through your bones. Above, a few stars wink mischievously, as if they're aware you're not entirely in this world anymore. You follow a new path lined with smooth stones that seem to glow faintly under the moonlight, or maybe that's just your imagination flexing its muscles after all the aromatic encouragement. Soon, you arrive at a small shelter woven from rattan and palm fronds. Inside, low wooden shelves are lined with hundreds of tiny clay pots, each sealed and marked with mysterious symbols. You step inside cautiously, half expecting a perfume ghost to greet you with jazz hands. A wizened elder sits cross-legged in the center, holding what looks like a long feather dipped in fragrant oil. She beckons you over and taps the space in front of her, inviting you to sit. As you settle down, she gestures to the rows of clay pots and begins to hum, a gentle tune that sounds like a river meandering through mossy rocks. She picks up one pot and opens it slowly, letting you catch a whiff of a scent so pure it makes you forget your own name for a moment. A surge of forest rain, hints of wild ginger, and the faint sweetness of mango skins dance past your nose. You nearly tip backward from the intensity, and she laughs, the sound low and crackly like dry leaves underfoot. Historians still argue whether these sealed pots were used for personal rituals or communal offerings to forest spirits. Either way, each pot here feels like a hidden diary, storing not words but scents to capture an entire moment in time. The elder explains that each pot represents a different emotion: longing, mischief, triumph, even those peculiar mornings when you wake up convinced you're a goose. She waves the feather under your nose again, and suddenly your brain floods with images of chasing dragonflies in a rice field, giggling until your sides ache. She passes you a blank pot and motions for you to create your own blend, a scent story that defines your journey tonight. You glance at the ingredients spread out before you: dried lime rinds, charred sandalwood chips, sticky resin that smells like roasted honey. A few flower petals, each more shy than the last, peek out from woven baskets. You start mixing, carefully layering resin first, then adding lime rinds and finally whispering a petal into the pot as though it might run away if startled. The elder nods approvingly, humming a tiny phrase that sounds like forest approval. Once you seal the pot, she presses it into your palms like a precious newborn kitten. You feel its warmth seep into your skin, the scent already leaking into the night air like a secret you can't quite keep. In one corner of the shelter, a young girl is recording each pot's personality in a bark-bound ledger. You peek over and spot elaborate doodles, stick figures dancing, moon phases, and one particularly squiggly shape labeled "Confused Rooster Morning." You point to it, and she giggles, miming a rooster strutting in confusion. Outside the shelter, you see villagers carrying their pots into a moonlit clearing, forming a giant spiral on the ground. Each pot is placed carefully, its scent released to mingle with the air and drift toward the stars. Historians still argue whether this spiral was meant to guide spirits home or simply impress nosy neighbors from rival villages. Tonight, though, it feels like an elegant ballet of scents, each telling its own shimmering bedtime story. As you step back from the spiral, you feel lighter, as though your pot has taken a bit of your weight, your worries, your cluttered thoughts, and sent them off dancing into the night sky. You carry this strange relief with you as you slip once more into the quiet, fragrant forest path. You drift away from the spiral of scent pots, feeling as though you've left behind a small echo of yourself under the moon's soft watch. Your arms sway loosely at your sides, and each breath is now a mini vacation into the worlds of lime rinds, rain-soaked bark, and ghostly flower petals. Up ahead, you notice a cluster of bamboo platforms elevated above the forest floor, connected by narrow, wobbly bridges. You climb the first one gingerly, half expecting it to creak out a complaint. Instead, it gives a playful little bounce under your weight, making you giggle like a kid on a trampoline at a sleepy birthday party. As you reach the top, you discover what the villagers call the midnight drying gardens. Here, dozens of bark strips, flower petals, and resins hang from thin ropes, drying under the starlight. The night air here is thick with promise, each suspended petal a frozen poem about storms, laughter, and the thousand ways to say, "I missed you," without words. A young boy carefully rotates each hanging piece, ensuring the moonlight kisses every surface evenly. He claims this step is crucial because the moon shares secrets only when she's in a good mood. Historians still argue whether moon drying had actual chemical benefits or was just a poetic ritual to keep night watchers entertained. Either way, it feels right to you now, the idea of moonbeams gently infusing each petal with lunar mischief. Nearby, a woman inspects each bark strip, checking for the perfect crispness and hue. You overhear her muttering about last year's disastrous rainy season batch that ended up smelling like soggy socks. You can't help but smirk, remembering your own laundry mishaps. We've all been there. Another villager invites you to help fold the dried bark sheets into tiny fans. As you work, you realize each fan is meant to be a perfume diffuser for sleeping mats. People would tuck them under their pillows so they could ride the night breezes straight into dreamland. You imagine ancient influencers doing unboxing videos for these fans. 10 out of 10 would sniff again. You start folding your first fan but accidentally crease it too sharply. The woman gently corrects you, showing a smooth, slow movement, almost like petting a particularly fussy cat. You laugh, feeling your shoulders drop another notch in relaxation. When you finish, the villagers applaud softly, as though you've just performed a flawless moon ballet. They place your fan in a small basket, ready to be distributed to dreamers around the village. You feel oddly proud, as if you've just contributed to a collective bedtime playlist made of scents instead of songs. Looking around, you notice a group gathering on a higher bamboo platform, chanting softly. You climb up and find them mixing dried petals into large communal pouches called dream cradles. These pouches are hung above hammocks so that sleepers sway gently beneath a gentle cascade of aroma. Historians still argue whether these dream cradles were purely functional or had spiritual importance tied to celestial gods. Some suggest they also served as signals to visiting traders that this was a village dedicated to the art of olfactory serenity, an early version of a 5-star hotel review, in scent form. A young girl offers you a turn at the cradle, and as you gently stir the petals inside, a breeze lifts a swirl of delicate fragrance into the air. For a fleeting moment, you almost believe you can see the dreams themselves drifting upward like fireflies, blinking in and out of view above the treetops. Finally, as you step off the bamboo bridge and descend back to solid ground, you feel the forest embrace you even more tightly, as if it's grateful you took part in its nightly rituals. Each inhalation now carries a shimmering layer of moon-whispered secrets, wrapping your mind in an invisible cocoon. You step down from the bamboo platforms, your feet touching the earth as though you're returning from a gentle flight. The cool soil feels different now, softer, almost ticklish under your soles. The scent of drying petals still clings to you, trailing behind like a sleepy parade. Wandering along a narrow trail, you hear distant humming and catch glimpses of flickering lights ahead. You follow, curiosity tugging at your shoulders like an over-enthusiastic puppy. Soon, you find a wide, open glade lit by dozens of tiny oil lamps arranged in a swirling pattern that resembles a giant nautilus shell. Villagers sit in clusters, some weaving palm leaf pillows, others grinding dried tree bark into powdery clouds that look suspiciously like magical pancake mix. You approach a circle where several elders are gathered, each holding a long wooden flute carved with vine patterns and small animal figures. They invite you to join them and hand you a small flute. Your attempt at producing a sound is so pitiful that one elder nearly spits out his tea laughing. But they all encourage you to keep trying, claiming, every squeak has a spirit, which sounds like a very polite way of saying, bless your heart. As you wheeze out your best flute sounds, the elders start playing in harmony. The notes rise and fall like waves against a moonlit shore, weaving between the trees and drawing in curious fireflies. A few villagers dance nearby, their arms moving slowly as if sculpting the night air itself. Historians still argue whether these night flute sessions were genuine musical gatherings or simply excuses to socialize and show off new perfume blends. Either way, the atmosphere feels like a gentle group lullaby, one meant to pull even the most stubborn insomniac into drowsiness. You notice some dancers wearing wreaths of dried petals and bark chips, their scent spiraling outward with every twist and sway. It's like watching slow-motion fireworks made entirely of smell, a living perfume performance. You almost clap but remember to keep your movements soft, as though you're underwater. A young woman taps your shoulder and offers you a small woven fan decorated with moon motifs. She explains that it's used to waft scent towards certain dancers or musicians, creating a scent wave that moves in rhythm with the music. You give it a try and nearly knock over an entire stack of bark bowls. You're clearly still working on your graceful forest choreography. She laughs and shows you again, moving her wrist in a lazy arc, like shooing away an exceptionally polite mosquito. You copy her, and finally manage to send a subtle waft of sweet, smoky fragrance toward one dancer. The dancer spins toward you, bows dramatically, and continues, as though you've just passed them a fragrant love note. In another corner, children gather around a shallow bowl filled with perfumed water. They play a game of flicking droplets into the air, trying to catch the falling mist on their tongues. You give it a try, and immediately realize you have zero hand-eye coordination, catching nothing but a drip on your forehead. You laugh so hard you nearly tip backward, and one child pats your head solemnly as if knighting you into their scent clan. Historians still argue whether these perfumed water games had symbolic meaning or were just a creative bedtime diversion for restless kids. In the glow of the oil lamps, though, it feels timeless and universal, the pure joy of playing before drifting into a long, fragrant sleep. As the music softens and the dancers slow their movements, the entire glade transforms into a giant living breathing dreamscape. The combined scent, music, and flickering lights wrap around you, pulling your eyelids into a slow, heavy dance of their own. When you finally stand to leave, your steps feel as though you're walking on soft moss pillows, your mind floating in and out of the melodies and smells like a lazy fish drifting through warm underwater currents. You slip quietly out of the glowing glade, the last strains of flute music echoing behind you like a fading lullaby. Your feet carry you down a narrow trail that winds deeper into the forest, under an archway of vines heavy with dew. Each droplet sparkles in the moonlight, as if tiny stars have chosen to take a nap among the leaves. As you follow the path, you stumble upon a group of villagers gathered around an enormous wooden vat. Smoke drifts lazily above it, swirling with a rich, earthy scent that makes your nostrils tingle and your brain conjure odd culinary fantasies. A tree bark latte, anyone? One elder stirs the mixture with a massive paddle, muscles flexing under the glow of torchlight. They invite you closer and hand you a small wooden ladle. You peer into the vat, half expecting to see a bubbling witch's brew. Instead, you find a thick, dark syrup infused with bark extracts, flower resins, and secret forest herbs. You scoop a bit and bring it to your nose. The aroma is so deep it feels like falling into a mossy cave lined with flower petals. You wobble slightly, your knees giving a gentle protest against all this aromatic indulgence. Historians still argue whether this thick syrup was strictly used for perfume making or also as a healing salve. Some claim it was even mixed into ceremonial teas to encourage vivid dreams. Tonight, you decide it's both, a liquid bridge between scent and spirit. Nearby, two women work on pressing the syrup into large cloth bundles shaped like elongated pillows. They explain that these scent pillows were placed in granaries and storage rooms to ward off pests while leaving everything smelling like a forest spa. You try to help, but your bundle looks like a deflated sausage more than a graceful forest pillow. They chuckle and gently show you how to twist and tie it properly, turning it into a neat, plump cushion of fragrance. As you help, a young boy runs by waving a long strip of dyed bark, leaving behind a streak of purple mist. He claims it's ghost color, used to mark scent trails that guide forest spirits home during festival nights. You giggle, imagining a lineup of forest ghosts sniffing along a purple breadcrumb path like determined bloodhounds. Another villager shows you how they dip carved wooden pendants into the syrup. These pendants, when worn around the neck, slowly release their scent throughout the day, functioning as an ancient, natural personal diffuser. One pendant shaped like a squirrel catches your eye. They insist you try it on. You accept and immediately feel a comforting warmth spreading across your chest, as though a tiny, fragrant squirrel has chosen to nap there. Historians still argue whether wearing such pendants was a mark of social status or merely a daily luxury. Either way, you feel oddly regal as you pose dramatically for the crowd, who reward you with gentle applause and a few sleepy giggles. Off to the side, a young girl is painting small leaves with thick, gooey syrup. She explains these scent leaves are folded and tucked into head wraps so the wearer can drift off into their own private aromatherapy cloud during afternoon naps. You try painting one but end up with sticky fingers that might attract a curious squirrel rather than lull you to sleep. She hands you a wet cloth, shaking her head with a wide grin. When you finally finish helping, they offer you a warm cup of bark tea, the steam curling into fragrant halos around your face. Each sip feels like a hug from an ancient tree, earthy and grounding, coaxing your mind toward gentle sleepiness. You stand slowly, cradling the pendant and inhaling deeply. The forest around you hums softly, each branch and leaf seemingly whispering approval of your newly found perfume artistry. You continue on your path, each step sinking deeper into the deliciously slow rhythm of the night. You wander away from the syrup station, your fingers still carrying that sticky sweetness, like you've been caught red-handed in some forbidden midnight dessert escapade. As you walk, the pendant on your neck swings lightly, releasing tiny puffs of bark perfume that feel like a personal forest bodyguard, politely shooing away worries and stray thoughts. Soon, the path opens up to a clearing dominated by rows of wooden racks that look like someone started building hammocks but forgot to finish. You approach and realize these are scent mats, large woven sheets infused with fragrant powders and bark extracts. Villagers lie sprawled across them, chatting lazily, combing each other's hair, or simply staring at the moon as if waiting for it to wink back. A friendly elder waves you over and invites you to lie down on a mat. You hesitantly lower yourself, expecting it to be prickly. Instead, the mat feels like a gentle hug from a particularly accommodating fern. With every breath, the mat releases microbursts of calming aroma that tickle your brain into a near-hypnotic state. As you relax, a group of young women sits nearby, braiding each other's hair and weaving small packets of scented powder into the strands. They believe this helps trap good dreams, and confuse the bad ones so they get lost and go bother someone else. Historians still argue whether this was simply a beauty ritual or if it carried deeper spiritual significance, or maybe they just loved messing with nightmare logistics. One of them leans over and offers to braid a tiny scented charm into your hair. You agree, partly because you're curious and partly because you secretly want to join the club of moonlit hair sorcery. As she works, the delicate tugging at your scalp is so relaxing that you nearly snore out loud. After she's finished, they all admire your new dream braid, and one girl dramatically declares you chief of sleepy thoughts, which sounds both noble and like a great title for your next social media bio. In another corner, children are rolling down small grass hills, each of them carrying a sachet of fragrant leaves tied to their waists. With every tumble, puffs of scent rise around them like a cartoon dust cloud. You watch, giggling as they collapse at the bottom, limbs tangled, smelling like tiny herbal fireworks. Historians still argue whether these playful activities were intentional scent rituals or simply a way to tire kids out before bedtime. Either way, you can't deny the effectiveness. You almost want to grab a sachet and join them, but your new hair charm feels too majestic for grass stains at the moment. Nearby, an elder begins telling stories in a low, gravelly voice. You shuffle closer to listen, and he shares legends of bark spirits who danced so wildly at night that they shed their skins, which then fell to the forest floor as perfume ingredients. You can't tell if he's serious, but you're too charmed to care. You nod solemnly, as if you, too, have known the struggles of skin-shedding bark spirits. A woman hands you a small bowl of soft bark paste, encouraging you to smear it on your wrists. You do so, and it feels like cool pudding, instantly blending with your pulse points and adding another subtle note to your scent symphony. You sniff and wonder if you should market this as Forest Yogurt Luxe someday. The mat beneath you seems to grow warmer, breathing along with your slow, syrupy heartbeat. You stretch your limbs, feeling as if you're floating above the forest floor on a sleepy magic carpet woven entirely of moonbeams and tree whispers. You finally rise, slowly, reluctantly, as though you're peeling yourself from the coziest dream you've ever had. The villagers wave, and you return their soft goodbyes, feeling your eyelids heavier than before, your thoughts swaddled in that familiar fragrant fog. You glide away from the dream-braiding circle, your scalp tingling with each step as the charm woven into your hair releases its gentle, forest-sweet aroma. You feel like a walking forest sprite, on an unofficial mission to sniff your way through time and space. Up ahead, you see a small hut glowing softly with lantern light, its doorway draped in strings of polished shells. As you approach, you hear soft humming, a tune so gentle it sounds like someone trying to lull a mountain to sleep. You duck inside and find an elderly woman sitting cross-legged among baskets overflowing with dried leaves, flower buds, and coiled pieces of tree bark. She gestures for you to sit and offers you a cup of warm, cloudy liquid that smells faintly like sweet mushrooms and wild honey. You sip cautiously. The taste is earthy and comforting, like a hug from the inside out. Historians still argue whether this brew was designed purely for relaxation or if it doubled as a mild medicinal tonic. Either way, after a few sips, your shoulders drop, your breath deepens, and you feel like a sleepy turtle slipping into its shell. The woman begins to sort leaves by size and color, her fingers moving with hypnotic precision. You can't help but lean in, your curiosity piqued. She explains that each combination of leaves and bark carries a specific, scent story, a personalized narrative meant to guide your dreams towards certain landscapes or emotions. She offers to make you your own scent story pouch. You watch as she sprinkles bright yellow petals, finely ground bark powder, and thin slivers of dried citrus peel into a tiny cloth satchel. She presses it closed and hands it to you with the solemnity of a royal decree. You hold it to your nose and immediately feel your imagination whisked away to a sun-drenched grove where you chase playful spirits through golden leaves. She chuckles, patting your arm as though she can see your mind traveling without you. Then, she hands you another pouch to hang from your belt, promising it will catch wandering moonbeams so you don't lose your way in dreams. You nod appreciatively, thinking this would definitely confuse the GPS if you tried explaining it. On the wall, you notice an assortment of small clay figurines, each painted with swirling patterns. She explains that these represent forest spirits who guard the secret of the perfume recipes and decide who gets the best dreams. You pick one up, a tiny creature with spiraled ears and big round eyes. You give it a conspiratorial wink before setting it back carefully. In the corner, an elderly man is crushing dried bark with a polished stone, rhythmically humming as he works. You shuffle over and try to mimic his technique, but your bark pieces fly everywhere like confetti at a surprise birthday party for a forest fairy. He laughs so deeply that it feels like the walls themselves giggle along. He takes your hands and guides your motions, your palms vibrating softly with each firm push. By the end, your hands are dusted in fragrant powder, and you feel oddly proud, like you've been initiated into a secret society that smells better than any spa you've ever dreamed of. Historians still argue whether this bark crushing was primarily a practical process or a form of meditative ritual designed to slow the mind. Judging by your new snail-like sense of time, it's safe to guess both. Before you leave, the woman places a dab of bark oil behind each of your ears. The scent blooms with each heartbeat, merging with the perfumes already lingering on your skin. You feel like a slow-motion waterfall, layers of scent flowing down in invisible streams. Thanking them with a soft bow, you step out into the moonlight once more, your new pouches swaying gently at your sides. You inhale deeply, each breath like a lullaby sung just for you, as you drift further into the dreamy maze of bark, flowers, and quiet laughter. You step out of the perfumer's hut, the moon now hanging lower, spilling silver light so thick it almost looks drinkable. You tilt your head back, imagining yourself sipping moonlight from a giant teacup, then shake the thought away with a sleepy chuckle. The scent pouches tied to your belt swing lightly with each step, like tiny, fragrant companions encouraging you onward. As you wander farther, you come upon a small clearing where villagers are gathered around a shallow pond. Torches circle the water, flickering in slow, sleepy rhythms. Their reflections shiver across the surface, making the pond appear alive, as if it's breathing along with you. A young man greets you and explains that tonight they're performing a moon-washing ritual, an act meant to cleanse not the body but the dreams waiting to bloom later that night. Historians still argue whether this ritual was purely symbolic or if it was believed to literally chase away stale dreams, clinging to your spirit like damp laundry on a line. The villagers invite you to join them, handing you a wide leaf folded into a scoop. You're meant to fill it with pond water and gently pour it over your forehead, imagining every worry trickling away into the soft earth. You do as instructed, and the water feels shockingly cool at first, then transforms into a gentle tingle that spreads across your face like a phantom forest breeze. A ripple of laughter rises as one participant dumps water too quickly and accidentally splashes an elder, who sputters indignantly before breaking into giggles. You join in the laughter, feeling the pond's soft music echoing deep in your chest. Nearby, a small group dips strands of bark into the water and then twists them into delicate bracelets. One girl offers to make you one, her fingers moving with feather-light speed. When she finishes, she slides the bracelet onto your wrist and gives it a quick pat, the universal sign for, you are now officially part of the Dream Club. The bracelet scent is faint but grows stronger as your skin warms it. You sniff and catch hints of lemony citrus, distant pine, and something that feels like a secret whispered in a hollow log. You wiggle your wrist happily, imagining it as your personal dream compass. A boy nearby busies himself making tiny boats from bark scraps and flower petals. He sets them afloat on the pond, each carrying a small, flickering ember at its center. The tiny lights drift and spin, their reflections merging with moonbeams to create a floating constellation on water. You watch, mesmerized, convinced the boats are ferrying small wishes to a place beyond ordinary sleep. Historians still argue whether these floating ember boats were offerings to spirits or simply an elaborate form of wish-making entertainment. Watching them, you suspect it's a bit of both, because why not send your wishes out in style? The elder who was earlier splashed walks over and hands you a piece of bark etched with delicate lines. It turns out to be a dream map, a symbolic guide to help you navigate the upcoming dreamscape. You trace your finger along the carvings, finding winding lines, star shapes, and little circles that might represent secret napping spots or portals to hidden dream gardens. You slip the map into your pouch, feeling oddly reassured. Even if you get lost in dreamland, at least you have the ancient equivalent of a scented GPS. With your forehead still cool, bracelet in place, and dream map safely stashed, you wave goodbye to the pond circle and step away. Your senses now carry a sleepy glow, your spirit feels rinsed clean, and your imagination swells with visions of gliding moon boats and fragrant forest parties. You continue down a narrow trail, feeling each footstep as a soft drumbeat, each inhalation as a gentle chant. Ahead, the forest thickens again, promising yet another layer of aromatic secrets to uncover before the night fully claims you. You meander deeper into the forest, where the moonlight flickers like a lazy candle, draping everything in shifting shadows. You pause to adjust the bark bracelet on your wrist, which now feels like a tiny guardian spirit humming softly against your skin. The scent wafts up every time you move your hand, a sweet reminder that you're part of this perfumed universe. A sudden gust carries a new aroma, smoky and sweet, like roasted chestnuts with a whisper of caramel. You follow the scent until you stumble upon a ring of villagers gathered around a low, smoldering fire. Logs shaped like giant fingers curl upward, each topped with small clay pots bubbling away. A villager gestures for you to come closer and hands you a steaming wooden ladle filled with what they call midnight bark brew. The liquid is dark and thick, and when you sip it, you taste hints of earthy mushroom, smoky bark, and a touch of honey. It feels like swallowing a forest dream, one that might sprout roots and start singing lullabies inside your belly. Historians still argue whether this brew was a formal sedative or just a beloved social drink, designed to keep people warm and drowsy during long gatherings. Whatever its true function, after a few sips, your eyelids become so heavy they might need their own support beams. Around the fire, an old man begins telling stories of how bark spirits chose which trees would gift the best perfume. He swears that some trees giggle if you scratch their bark just right, and that only the bravest villagers dare to do it at night. You imagine sneaking up to a tree, tickling its trunk until it cackles and showers you with fragrant blessings, a scene so ridiculous you almost laugh your drink out through your nose. Beside you, a young woman uses a large fan woven from palm leaves to waft smoke from the fire toward your face. You close your eyes, and the warm, fragrant smoke curls around you like a giant sleepy python, gently squeezing out every stray anxious thought. When you open your eyes again, you feel lighter, as if your body is made of sweet-smelling mist. Next, She guides you to a low wooden bench where they smear a thin layer of bark paste on your forearms. As the paste dries, it crackles slightly, releasing even more scent. You catch a blend of spicy ginger, warm earth, and that elusive forest sweetness that makes you want to hum old lullabies you don't remember learning. A child runs past, laughing, wearing an oversized bark hat shaped like a mushroom cap. You're tempted to ask for one yourself but decide to maintain at least a sliver of dignity, or maybe just save it for tomorrow's festival. Historians still argue whether these bark paste smearing sessions were sacred purification rituals or simply a fun excuse to play with mud-like cosmetics under the moonlight. Whatever the original purpose, it feels like being part of a forest masquerade, one where everyone is slowly transforming into mythical tree spirits. An elder claps rhythmically, signaling a dance circle is about to begin. You're nudged forward, half protesting, but soon you're swaying in slow loops with the others. The rhythm is gentle, more like floating than dancing, your feet barely grazing the earth. Someone hands you a small gourd shaker filled with seeds, and you join the chorus of soft rattling, each shake echoing through your limbs. It feels less like a performance and more like a group lullaby in motion, each swirl inviting you deeper into this sleepy woodland trance. After what feels like both forever and just a moment, the dance circle dissolves. You return to the fire, your hair damp from gentle sweat, your bracelet now radiating its scent even more vividly. You sip the last of your midnight bark brew, letting the warmth sink into your bones like a secret you'll keep forever. With a slow exhale, you leave the fire circle behind, stepping into the forest path once more. Each breath feels fuller, each footstep softer, your spirit swaying gently inside you as though already drifting into dreamland. You wander away from the fire circle, the warmth still buzzing faintly in your veins, as if your bones have decided to host a tiny forest rave all on their own. The moon sits even lower now, casting thick silver pools among the tangled roots and ferns. You pause to admire the strange patterns the light makes, like the forest is covered in shimmering lace. Ahead, a wooden archway stands crookedly, draped with garlands of dried flower heads and bark ribbons. You duck under it and enter a small glen filled with low tables covered in carefully arranged bits of bark, seeds, and flower petals. Soft humming drifts from the villagers, some of whom are weaving while others paint. A woman waves you over and points to a pile of thin bark sheets laid out like a stack of dream diaries waiting to be written. She shows you how to dip a slender twig into a small pot of natural ink, a dark, glimmering substance made from boiled bark sap and crushed mineral dust. You begin to draw wobbly lines, your fingers trembling with both excitement and drowsiness. The ink smells faintly like pine smoke and overripe figs, an oddly delicious combination that makes you want to breathe deeply between strokes. Your first doodle looks suspiciously like a sad potato, but the woman smiles and nods approvingly as if you've just painted a masterpiece destined for the emperor's private collection. Historians still argue whether these bark paintings were personal dream talismans or communal memory scrolls meant to share visions with future generations. Either way, your wonky potato dream creature now lives forever on a bark sheet, a surprisingly comforting thought. Around you, villagers murmur as they add spirals, suns, moons, and tiny dancing figures to their own sheets. Each image seems to glow in the moonlight, a collective constellation slowly taking shape on the forest floor. A young boy leans over to watch your progress and offers you a tiny bark stamp shaped like a turtle. You press it into your ink and then onto your sheet, leaving a perfect turtle imprint beside your potato masterpiece. You both erupt into giggles so loud that a sleepy owl overhead glares down at you with a judgmental hoot. Nearby, an elder carefully folds finished bark paintings into small scrolls and tucks them into hollow bamboo tubes. He ties them closed with bark ribbons and places each tube into a basket lined with fragrant leaves. Legend has it these tubes were buried in sacred spots or hidden in tree hollows to fertilize the forest with new dreams. Before you leave, the woman hands you a small tube for your potato turtle creation. You slip your scroll inside, tie it tight, and cradle it like a tiny sleeping pet. You feel oddly protective over your new dream talisman, proof that you can participate in ancient traditions even if your artistic skills scream abstract vegetable garden. Historians still argue whether the dream tubes were retrieved later for festivals or left untouched as silent forest guardians. You imagine yours someday sprouting into a small grove of oddly shaped potato trees or perhaps a sleepy turtle orchard. You slip the tube into your scent pouch, feeling it nestle among the fragrant bits of bark and petals. You imagine the scents mingling with your dream scroll, weaving a new story to carry you into sleep. The humming around you deepens as the villagers begin a gentle chant. You sway with them, letting the soft sounds wash over you like waves on a moonlit shore. Your eyelids flicker, your breath slows, and each heartbeat feels like a mossy drum echoing far into the woods. As you step out of the glen, your senses feel polished and light, like you've been dipped in moonlight and wrung out with gentle laughter. You hold your scent pouch close, the bark tube nestled inside like a secret lullaby. You continue along the moonlit trail, each footstep carrying you deeper into a realm that blurs the line between waking and dreaming. You slip back onto the narrow path, your scent pouch bouncing gently against your hip, the bark tube humming with sleepy possibility. Ahead, the forest canopy thins, and the moon shines brighter, pooling in wide, quiet puddles that make the undergrowth shimmer like a fairy tale carpet. You pass a grove of tall trees whose bark peels away in curling strips, revealing pale, fragrant wood beneath. The air here smells like warm vanilla mixed with a hint of sun-baked stone. You run your hand along a trunk, feeling its smooth, almost skin-like surface. You half expect it to giggle, remembering the elders' stories of ticklish trees. In the clearing, a group of villagers kneels around a low, circular table covered in tiny dishes. Each dish holds an oily paste, mixtures of crushed bark, flower resins, honey, and rainwater collected during thunderstorms. You are invited to sit and blend your own sleep balm, a thick perfume paste that you smear across your temples and neck before bed. You choose a little dish labeled with a symbol of a swirling moon. You add a dollop of honey-infused bark paste and a dash of rainwater. The concoction gleams in the moonlight, as though it's gathered a few starlit secrets just for you. As you swirl it together, a sweet, resinous scent rises, making your head swim with images of dancing moon spirits and dozing tree nymphs. Historians still argue whether these pastes were believed to ward off nightmares or simply serve as luxurious bedtime treats for the senses. You decide it's probably both, a practical step against cranky spirits and a fancy excuse for an aromatic spa night under the stars. When you smear it on your temples, it feels cool at first, then turns into a gentle warmth that pulses in sync with your slowing heartbeat. It's as if you've been touched by a sleepy forest ghost who whispers, "Shoo, it's almost time." Beside you, a villager carefully rubs the paste onto a wooden mask shaped like a fox's face. He slips it on and curls up in a nest of woven vines, muttering what might be a lullaby to himself. You giggle quietly, imagining a fox spirit dreaming of moonlit hen parties or secret bark buffets. You're handed a shallow bowl filled with tiny pieces of bark confetti, each flake carrying a different aromatic note. You toss a handful into the air, and they drift down like fragrant snowflakes. As they land on your hair and shoulders, you smell whiffs of sweet fig, tangy citrus, and rich earthy warmth. It's like wearing a perfume made by mischievous squirrels. Historians still argue whether this bark confetti was part of a formal blessing ritual or just an elaborate way to keep the party going a bit longer. Looking at the villagers' twinkling eyes and sleepy grins, you're fairly certain it's mostly for fun, and maybe a bit for the spectacle of it all. You're offered a final taste of a bark infusion drink, this time mixed with coconut milk and a hint of ginger. You sip, and your body shivers with delight. The drink trickles warmth down your throat and radiates outward, as though your bones have been wrapped in a cozy forest blanket. The villagers gather to sing a slow, hypnotic chant, voices blending in a hush that makes your skin tingle. You sway gently, imagining your mind floating above the clearing, drifting higher and higher until the treetops look like soft green waves. As the chant fades, you rise to your feet, a sense of calm wrapping around you like a silken cocoon. You clutch your scent pouch, feeling its small, sturdy weight, and inhale deeply. You are now perfumed, blessed, and more dream-ready than you've ever been. You step back onto the trail, feet almost forgetting the weight of your body, each stride a gentle invitation to dissolve into sleep's welcoming fog. Ahead, the forest grows darker, promising even more mysteries to lull you into your final dream chapters tonight. You glide forward, your feet brushing the mossy ground as if you're skating on the softest, most fragrant ice. The moon now looks like a sleepy eye, half closed, as though it too is drifting into its own celestial nap. Ahead, the trees open into a small, hidden valley carpeted with thick ferns. Fireflies blink in clusters, weaving delicate patterns that remind you of starlit calligraphy. You pause to watch them swirl and twinkle, each tiny light pulsing like a mini heartbeat in the dark. Nestled in the center of this valley sits a circular stone platform. On it, a few villagers lounge like cats, sprawled on their backs with bark pillows propped under their necks. They invite you to join them with a lazy wave, so you sink down, placing your scent pouch carefully beside you like a beloved teddy bear. Someone slides a shallow clay bowl toward you, filled with a shimmering bark oil infusion. You dip your fingertips into the bowl, and the oil feels cool and silky, as though it's been kissed by moonbeams. You dab it behind your ears and along your collarbones, creating a trail of gentle warmth that travels down your spine and settles low in your belly. Historians still argue whether this oil was used as a sacred protective charm or simply as an aromatic moisturizer before bed. Either way, it feels like a lullaby for your skin, each dab coaxing you closer to the edge of a waking dream. Beside you, a young man balances a small wooden tray on his stomach. On it sit delicately carved bark figurines, tiny tigers, coiled snakes, and dreamy birds with wings spread wide. You reach out to pick one and end up choosing a turtle, because tonight has been all about slow, gentle adventures. You cradle the turtle in your hand, tracing its delicate grooves with your thumb. He chuckles and tells you these figurines are believed to guard your dreams, ensuring you avoid nightmares of swamp monsters or tax collectors demanding unpaid bark perfume fees. You laugh, and the sound rolls out across the valley like a playful breeze. Then a woman nearby begins a quiet, humming song that feels both ancient and impossibly tender. The lyrics swirl around you like the scent of warm honey and morning dew. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you can almost see yourself melting into the ferns, becoming part of the forest floor. The moon slips lower, casting long shadows that crawl like gentle ghosts over your toes. One villager tosses a handful of bark confetti into the air, and a few flakes drift onto your face. You catch the faintest whiff of toasted almond and wood smoke, a final fragrant gift from the trees. Historians still argue whether these shared moonlit gatherings were formal religious ceremonies or just dreamy community sleepovers. Looking at the scene now, it seems more like a collective bedtime story come to life, one that requires no words, only shared breath and shimmering light. You tuck the little turtle figurine into your scent pouch, giving it a soft pat as though telling it, "Sweet dreams, tiny friend." Then you stretch out on the moss, your fingers laced over your stomach, and let your head rest against the bark pillow. You feel the earth breathing beneath you, each inhale and exhale a slow, ancient rhythm you can almost match. You imagine the stories drifting through the ground, roots whispering secrets, worms composing earthy poems, tiny bugs waltzing with fallen leaves. A cool breeze slips over your cheeks, and you smile, eyes half open, watching the fireflies continue their gentle dance. Each light flickers like a soft drumbeat in a symphony designed to soothe even the most restless minds. You close your eyes fully now, knowing you're only a heartbeat away from surrendering to the forest's deepest, softest dream chamber. The hush that falls over the valley now feels almost sacred, as though the entire forest has collectively decided to exhale and curl up for a nap. You lie still, your scent pouch cradled on your chest, the bark turtle figurine nestled inside, and the gentle warmth of the bark oil still pulsing against your skin. Above, the moon hangs low enough that you can almost imagine climbing a vine and giving it a goodnight hug. The fireflies slow their blinking, drifting lower to the ferns until they resemble tiny candles flickering out one by one. A faint rustle draws your gaze to a cluster of elders seated around a low stone basin. One by one, they drop fragments of bark, some charred, some still fresh, into the basin. Wisps of fragrant smoke curl upward, weaving through the air in gentle spirals. Each swirl seems to sketch sleepy lullabies across the sky, a soft ink against the moon's pale parchment. A nearby villager gestures for you to come closer. You do, your limbs heavy but willing. He hands you a final bark fragment, this one light as a feather and delicately etched with tiny moon symbols. You drop it into the basin, and as it catches fire, the smoke rises past your nose, carrying the earthy, slightly sweet scent you've come to associate with these forest guardians. Historians still argue whether this final smoke offering was meant to call forth forest spirits or simply a symbolic, closing of the day, ceremony. Tonight, it feels like a promise, your dreams will be watched over, and your scent-wrapped memories will scatter gently across the treetops. A slow chant begins again, even softer than before. This time, it's more of a breath than a song, a quiet, rhythmic hush that seeps into your bones. You sway gently, your eyes drifting closed and open again in that half-waking rhythm so familiar to anyone teetering on the edge of sleep. Your fingers tighten around your scent pouch one last time. You imagine it glowing softly inside, the bark pieces, confetti flakes, dream scroll, and turtle figurine all shimmering together like a miniature star cluster tucked into your palm. As the chant drifts on, the villagers begin to lie down around the basin, arms folded across their chests or draped over each other's shoulders. You find a small patch of moss just for yourself and slowly lower your body until the ground cradles you like an old friend. The breeze sighs against your cheeks, and the last of the moonlight pools across your eyelids. You feel your breath stretch, each inhale a sweet bark-scented wave, each exhale a gentle sigh that melts into the soil beneath you. Historians still argue whether these nighttime gatherings shaped the community's collective memory or were simply excuses for elaborate forest pajamas parties. Either way, the magic of this moment can't be denied. As your awareness drifts, you feel the forest hold you close, whispering tales of root systems and distant rains. You picture your scent pouch floating up above the trees, scattering its stories into the star-streaked sky. In the final hush before sleep fully claims you, you send a silent goodnight to every turtle, owl, moss patch, and moonbeam that has guided you here. You sense them smiling back, a whole forest choir wishing you safe passage into dreams. Your breath finally evens out. You are no longer quite here, and not yet entirely elsewhere. You are exactly where you need to be, and now, as the last echoes of the chant fade and the moon slips behind its final curtain of drifting leaves, you find yourself floating ever so lightly between this forest and a softer, deeper place. Each heartbeat stretches a little longer, each breath drifts out a little farther, like ripples across a silent pond under starlight. The cool air lingers at your temples, a gentle reminder of all the scents, stories, and dream scrolls you've gathered tonight. You can almost hear the distant whispers of those bark tubes tucked away in secret hollows, promising to protect your sleep like tiny sentinels. Let your shoulders soften even more. Let your mind let go of every last wandering thought, each one floating away like a fragrant flake of bark confetti. Imagine them settling onto the forest floor, disappearing into mossy cracks, leaving you weightless and free. The villagers' soft breathing becomes your lullaby now, an ancient melody carried on the wind, a secret language that needs no words. You are a single note in this timeless song, wrapped in the hush of tree trunks and the glisten of moonlit dew. You might feel a final sleepy smile tug at your lips as your pulse slows, merging with the deep, patient rhythm of the earth beneath you. In this final drift, you are carried effortlessly, almost imperceptibly, into the endless gentle cradle of sleep. So rest now. You are safe, warm, and profoundly at peace. Dream well, dream deep, and let the quiet forest hold your stories until you wake.